how old were you during the time of the 1972 flood?
I was 29 years old on the evening of June 9th, 1972, during the initial hours of the flooding, which occurred, of course, coming down Dark Canyon and into Rapid City. I was 29 at that time.
And how would you describe experiencing an emergency of that magnitude?
Well, of course, it was a surprise. There was no one here. We did not have warning from the Weather Service or anybody else. It finally dawned on a lot of people that this would be a significant weather event. And I was out by Canyon Lake around 7 o'clock that evening, and when the bridge above Canyon Lake failed and it sort of exploded, and then all of that debris floated into the lake, and the manager of the gas company was standing there with me, and I had just helped his crew turn off a gas main so that the gas would be off and the homes across that side of the creek would not face explosions and escaping natural gas. He put his arms around me, and we attended the same church, and he looked me in the eye. He said, "Mayor, you know, somebody could get killed in this thing." That was about 7:30 that evening when it dawned on me that in all probability we would have a very high number of fatalities.
Now it's almost 40 years later, and it seems like you remember that day vividly.
Well, it seems like the terror of that moment, the sadness, the despair. We lost 3 firemen, a couple of policemen, 2 public works employees, and I was their commander, or I was their mayor at the time, and these were very emotional moments, but also we lost over 230 additional fine citizens of Rapid City and the region. I would say that the memories of the 1972 flood are tattooed on my soul. They seem to be emblazoned there. I think about it all the time. It is 40 years later. We think of things we might have done differently. But all in all, I think back on the recovery with some pride. I believe Rapid City had the best 10 city councilmen in the history of the city. I believe they were wise and brave, and they were very courageous in the policies that they adopted, that we worked through with the people during the summer of 1972. The recovery is a matter of pride, but it's also a matter of extreme sadness for me and my family. My wife was my best friend, my best advisor. She passed away about a year and a half ago. So I felt like I've lost my best friend now, my best supporter. And I was a very young man to be mayor of Rapid City. We had just voted on the Civic Center. It seemed like Rapid City was just on the launching pad for a very positive era of development. And 63% of the people had agreed to pay taxes and build the convention center. We just had a massive cleanup campaign that was very successful. About 3,000 loads of garbage had been hauled out to the city dump on the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday and Monday before the flood. There was a sense of optimism in the city like never in my lifetime. And then it rained on the evening of June 9th, and none of us will ever be the same.
In hindsight, is there something that maybe you would have done differently?
Well, I wish we would have had enough information so that I could have put out a warning on all of the radio stations and both TV stations much earlier in the evening. We simply did not have that information. We simply did not have a comprehension about the magnitude of the waters that would come. The highest waters came long after midnight. I've often said that I believe more people died on June 10th than died on June 9th. Throughout the night, the water got incredibly high, and there was much suffering and much death after midnight. Oh, if I had a wish, it would be that we would have had a little foresight and more information, and I wish I would have put the warning out about 7 o'clock and told everybody who lived within half a mile of Rapid Creek to just get the hell out of there and go to high ground, and we'll let the chips fall tomorrow morning. But we didn't put out that type of a warning system. And after we did put out the warning, KOTA television and the other radio stations in town lost electrical power, and they went off the air. So at most we had a 35 or 40-minute warning for the people, but a lot of neighborhoods had lost their electricity already, and the TV station was one of the last businesses in town to lose its power. So we did not put out an effective warning. I will accept my share of responsibility for that problem, but I certainly have wished over the last 40 years that somehow we could have had a more comprehensive warning. I wish it would have been me that could have handled and understood the magnitude of the disaster earlier, but that's all hindsight now, and we had no idea it would turn out to be a catastrophe where over 230 people would die.
Now, most of the people who lived during the 1972 flood have probably moved or probably passed away. Why is it so important to keep doing these anniversaries?
Well, I think that's your best question of the afternoon. It's important that we remember, and it's important that we learn. The floodplain in Rapid City has a history of flooding over the past several hundred years. High water is not a new thing to the banks of Rapid Creek here in western South Dakota on the eastern side of the Black Hills. And for those generations that were not alive in 1972, they should understand the recreational potential and the enjoyment that the floodplain park provides, but they also should know that many, many times floodwaters have even been higher than they were in 1972. And we want to remind people that the floodplain is a wonderful place to visit, a wonderful place for recreation and hiking trails and biking trails and soccer fields and all sorts of outdoor recreation. But the urban floodplain is an incredibly stupid place to sleep for homes and commercial businesses. Water can be diverted through those buildings and people can die. And they died at the rate of about 20 per hour during the disaster in 1972. So this exercise next summer in June will be an opportunity to educate the people about the potential for recreation and tranquility in the urban floodplain, and to teach the people time and time again that that land should not be used for residential or commercial reasons. It should be used for recreation. And if we keep that theme, Rapid City will continue to be a very safe city for the next 200 years, and we feel very strongly about that. So our commemorative services in 2012 are designed to re-educate the people to the dangers of violating the floodplain, and we hope that we can maintain the floodplain as a source of tranquility and peace and serenity for the city, and not just another area where more people can die during the next period of high water.
Did you ever imagine yourself that you would one day be tasked with helping to plan the 40th anniversary?
It never dawned on me. About 2 weeks ago, our new mayor here in Rapid City, Sam, called me. I believe the mayor has a strong heart and he has a good historical appreciation. He told me that he was born the year after the flood, but he does understand the historical significance of the flood in Rapid City history. And he called to ask me if I would be a resource person in terms of history of the flood and history of the disaster and history of the recovery. And what we would like to think that we did is go from a disaster to an opportunity to make the city a safe place to live. And I never fathomed myself being involved in the 40th anniversary planning, but I'm very proud to do that because we want it to be an educational period for the next generation and these generations who are living here right now. And we also want to make sure that that floodplain remains safe, that we never cave into a rezoning application to put housing or commercial structures along Rapid Creek. And if I can help educate the people, then our efforts back in 1972 through about 1980 will not have been in vain.
And do you think that a flood like the 1972 flood could happen again? And if so, what advice would you give the current mayor, Sam Quaker?
Well, I think without a doubt Rapid City will see water of even a higher magnitude in future years. By no means, in terms of several hundred years of history, was the storm in 1972 a freak storm. It was not. There have been storms since the advent of the white man in the Black Hills where the water has been even of greater volumes. During the Indian times, when the Indian nations occupied the Black Hills, many floods were much greater than the flood in 1972. And so I would just urge this mayor and future mayors to be vigilant, to educate the people about the dangers of violating the floodplain. We should never allow that land to be rezoned for anything but recreation. As I said before, the floodplain is a wonderful place to visit and recreate, but a very stupid place to sleep. And I hope that is the message that we can leave with future generations about how to make use of both sides of Rapid Creek, from Canyon Lake and Dark Canyon way down and beyond the fairgrounds.
Is there anything else that you would like to add or say?
Well, I would say without a doubt, and if my wife were here, she would join me, that it was the most distinct honor of my lifetime to serve as mayor of Rapid City. The people gambled on a very young man. I was just home from Vietnam. I wanted Rapid City to be a better place. We wanted to develop the Civic Center. Then we had the massive job of recovery. I think as I look at myself every morning when I shave, I gave Rapid City the best I could. I confessed to many mistakes, but it was an honor to be mayor of this city, and this city is a very special place. The survivors demonstrated more courage and fortitude than any other people I've ever witnessed in my life. And yet we had a degree of terror and loss and death here that far exceeded my worst moments in Vietnam from 1968 to 1969. Rapid City is a strong city. I'm proud to have been mayor here, and I have high respect for those men who have served as mayor after I left office in 1975. And I wish for the citizens of Rapid City many generations of happiness as they enjoy the floodplain park, which is really the most historical event in the history of disaster recovery in America. This floodplain is now safe, and I say God bless the people for their wisdom, and we hope the floodplain will remain a recreational avenue forever and ever in Rapid City, South Dakota.
And lastly, what are you looking forward to the most for this upcoming anniversary?
Well, I think the key reason why we are planning with such an effort on the commemoration of the disaster is to educate this generation and future generations about safety in the urban floodplain. That's the message we want to drive home. We want to give thanks for the survivors, thanks to the federal government. I believe that government in general worked very well. Our city, our county, our state government, Governor Knipe, the legislature, and our congressional delegation did a wonderful job, and people should have high respect and a positive regard for the quality of the governmental services that were delivered after the disaster. And government service is something for which all of us should be proud. And those people that are passing out this poison today, that government cannot be trusted and government is evil and government is rotten, we didn't hear anybody saying that in Rapid City, South Dakota, or the four-county disaster area in 1972. I remain very, very optimistic about democracy in general, and I believe we can all be proud of the government that we had in 1972, and I believe it served the people very well.
Tom Barnett, thank you.
Thank you very much.